Hello, everybody. Welcome out there to Dangerous Ideas, where we get down to core reality. We don't just sit on the surface. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry. No Eleanor Goldfield here today. I know 99% of you are only here for her, which makes this moment awkward. Got a lot of important news, though, on this show. I will be covering how even Israeli generals are saying they're running out of ammo. On top of that, we have evidence that Israel, the economy is beginning to flounder, beginning to collapse. Also, a breaking news story on an Israeli spy within the UK's Labour Party. But I'm going to begin, though, today, and please hit thumbs up, hit share, throw in some super chats to support the show. But I'm going to begin today with Keir Starmer of said Labour Party has just won Prime Minister of the UK. And this is the first time the Labour Party has been in power in 14 years. But is it really much of a Labour Party anymore? That's the question. Or is it as right-wing as your average conservative, quote unquote? Here's from New York Times. Starmer becomes UK Prime Minister after a Labour Party landslide. But while the Labour's more than 410 seats in Parliament ensured the party a robust majority, the breakdown of votes and the lowest turnout in years, I wonder why that is, indicated the challenges for Mr. Starmer ahead. The BBC estimated that Labour had garnered only 35% of the votes nationwide, which John Curtis, a prominent polling expert, said would be the lowest share of the vote won by any single party majority government. The lowest shares ever of the vote and incredibly low turnout. And that is what has allowed Labour to win their first prime ministership in 14 years. And let's just remember, Keir Starmer, and this is according to his mother, piece of human garbage, absolutely horrible human being, has spent a lot of time and effort to purge the Labour Party of anyone who might seem occasionally for a moment accidentally left-wing for a split second. All of those people have been purged from the Labour Party. First and foremost, Jeremy Corbyn. And the way they did that was through a completely ridiculous accusation, ongoing campaigns with the mainstream media to claim that Jeremy Corbyn was anti-Semitic simply because he criticized Israel for being exactly what Israel is, which is an apartheid regime that does not respect or abide by any sort of rights for Palestinians. And now, of course, that has segued into full frontal genocide against Palestinians. And so Jeremy Corbyn has been proven right at every step. Yet Starmer purged, and him along with a group of minions and troglodytes and toadies and what have you following behind him, and yes sir, yes, that type of situation. They have helped make sure that the Labour Party does not have any left-wingers in it anymore. And you can draw some similarities to the Democrats in the United States and to Bernie Sanders in the United States, although Jeremy Corbyn has kept strong, far more strong in terms of who he is and what he stands for than Bernie Sanders did, with Bernie Sanders running around the country campaigning for Hillary Clinton for an endless number of weeks and months. But all that being said, there was also a win for Jeremy Corbyn, which I am now failing to pull up on the screen. Corbyn won. He was not running for prime minister, obviously, but Corbyn beat Labour because Corbyn was kicked out of the Labour Party. He was reelected as a London member of parliament, despite the fact that he was kicked out of the Labour Party. Former Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has secured victory in Islington North, which I assume is pronounced by locals as Islington, a seat he has held since 1983. But this marks his first win as an independent member of parliament. In March 2023, incumbent Labour leader Keir Starmer prevented Corbyn from running as a party candidate. So Starmer didn't just push Corbyn to the fringes of the party. He then forbade him or found a way to make it impossible for him to run as a Labour candidate. So then Corbyn said, all right, well, here's an idea. Go after yourself. And I will run as an independent. And Corbyn won. So a big gnarly FU to the Labour Party as Corbyn ran as an independent. Despite being expulsed, despite his expulsion from the party, and he has long advocated for the rights of Palestinian people, and in his acceptance speech said the electorate is for a government that searches for peace and not war on the world stage. And we know that the UK has been incredibly prominent in the ongoing genocide, helping Israel commit that genocide. But on top of that, very prominent in the ongoing proxy war in Ukraine, helping the U.S. to continue this proxy war, despite the fact that hundreds of thousands have been killed, despite the fact that there was a peace plan on the table a month after the proxy war began over 2 years ago. And Boris Johnson was the face of making sure that peace deal was stopped so that they could continue the proxy war. And Boris Johnson also recently the face of an essay he wrote in the mainstream media saying that the proxy war in Ukraine is about Western hegemony. And he was saying this proudly and trying to say why it's so important. And we're all of us with two brain cells to rub together. Sounds a little painful. All of us with the two brain cells said, I thought you told us this was not about Western hegemony. I thought you told us that this was about Ukraine. I thought that you told us this was about helping Ukraine to fight off the Russian invaders. Oh, no, it's about Western hegemony. Ha, interesting that. So Corbyn has won. The Labour Party is not a left-wing party any longer, if it ever were. And Keir Starmer is not left-wing, and he has done everything he can to purge that Labour Party of left-wingers. So there you go. If you want to be left-wing, pretty similar to the U.S. government, if you want to be left-wing, you basically need to be out of the party structures. Which is their goal, was to force everyone out of the main parties because it's a lot easier to get elected when you're in a main party. Also, I should remind everyone that, did you notice that the UK called for elections with the prime minister, being the one that was up for grabs. And it was 2 months before they had the election? I think maybe 3, but I think 2. That's how long they have an election run up in the UK and in most countries. In the United States, 13, 14 years for each election. No, but seriously, we basically have an election run up of roughly 3 years. Maybe for the first of those 3 years, it's only 1 out of every 4 stories is about it. Then as you get to the 2 years before the election, then it's 7 out of every 8 stories is about it, or about Donald Trump, or about something related. And then as you get into the final year before the election, 99.9% is about said election, which the American people have little to no say on. So it is, in that way, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's designed to distract us from real life, from core reality I like to talk about, from the stuff that is beneath those surface layers. And another point about the UK elections is, as with the US elections, the two main parties, and Nigel Farage and his party made big gains as well. But the two main parties, Conservative and Labor, and in the U.S. we call them Democrats and Republicans. As with the U.S., they agree on 99% of the core, 95% maybe of the core issues, the core reality issues of the country of UK, but of the Western powers in general, in terms of war, whether it be Israel's genocide or proxy war in Ukraine or Iraq or Syria, supporting America on all these levels, whether it be that capitalism should continue to be the only economic system we could ever have, humans could ever have. We came up with it, or it really gained traction, industrial capitalism, 100, 150 years ago, and now it's the only thing that humans could ever do, right? to be able to survive. It is the only way that in the history of humankind, it has been a flicker of a flare, a little spark that has happened. If you were to lay all that history out there, you'd see this little tiny spark at the end that would be industrial capitalism. And we're all going, yeah, it's the only way things could ever work. Meanwhile, it is destroying us, destroying our planet, destroying our future, destroying grandkids, and whether they can have a good time one day. Sorry, my record got stuck there. I had to bump the needle along. Okay, let's still get to this Israel story. I have actually some more breaking news about the Labor Party coming up in a few minutes connected to Israel, but let's start with the fact that Israeli generals, and this is from the New York Times, so this is not hidden media. Again, I'll get down to core reality below the surface story. But this is Israeli generals, the Israeli military is saying they're running low on ammo. They're running out of ammo, and they are also saying that they want this to be done, that they want a ceasefire, while Netanyahu and various other goons do not want a ceasefire. They want to continue the ethnic cleansing and the genocide. It's been 270 some days now. And of course, 40,000 people murdered, 70% women and children. All of the hospitals have been blown up and destroyed. All of the schools, or most of the schools, most of the UN relief areas have been blown up and destroyed. Many of the tent refugee areas have been bombed. More journalists killed in the past 270 days than the entirety of the Vietnam War. More journalists killed than the entirety of World War II, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get the point. And even the Israeli generals, these are people who are pro-Israel. These are people who are basically pro-genocide, but you'll see why they want this to wrap up. Israel's top generals want to begin a ceasefire in Gaza, even if it keeps Hamas in power for the time being, widening a rift between the military and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has opposed a truce that would allow Hamas to survive the war. Now, you phrase it that way, and it sounds kind of, I don't know about reasonable, but more towards reasonable. Well, Netanyahu doesn't want a truce that would allow naughty terrorist Hamas to survive the war. But because Israel has no ability to actually stop Hamas, for every Hamas militant and for every Hamas fighter that you kill, because you're killing their family with them, etc., you probably create 10 or 15 who go, my half my family's been murdered. I think I'm going to pick up a gun and be a part of this. Thank you, Absalon, for the donation, for getting the super chat started. Really appreciate that. You guys keep this show going. So they don't actually have a way to stop Hamas. They have proven that again and again, that it's not going. Israel's not going to defeat Hamas tomorrow or the day after or a year from now. So when Netanyahu says, I'm not going to sign any truce, any ceasefire that allows for Hamas to exist, what he means is I'm going to continue ethnic cleansing no matter what. And so anybody who says, oh, it's Hamas stopping the ceasefire, they're full of absolute shit, and they maybe have no idea what they're talking about, or maybe they've just chosen to be propaganda. Tough to say. Anyway, the generals think that a truce would be the best way of freeing the roughly 120 Israelis still held, both dead and alive, in Gaza, according to interviews with 6 current and former security officials. Quick reminder, Hamas has 120 hostages, dead or alive. Israel has roughly 10,000 Palestinian hostages, dead or alive, because many of them do die in Israeli custody because Israel is torturing them so severely that many of them die. Under-equipped for further fighting after Israel's longest war in decades, the generals also think their forces need to recuperate in case a land war breaks out against Hezbollah, the Lebanese militia that has been locked in a low-level fight with Israel since October. And this is another key point that is now, apparently, according to this New York Times article, being admitted by liberal media, is that the Hezbollah army is more powerful than Israel has wanted to admit, and they can't just defeat them. Israel cannot just go boom and drop a few bombs and Hezbollah's done. No, Hezbollah is quite powerful. They also have the backing of Iran and many others, but um, Israel has no way, probably no way, and definitely no easy way to defeat Hezbollah. I mean, some believe that in a straight up war, Hezbollah would win, but either way, Israel's running out of bombs. They're committing such a genocide and dropping so many bombs. I mean, 3 or 4 Hiroshima atomic bombs worth of explosive tonnage has been dropped on this tiny area of Gaza. Thank you, Momo, for the donation. And so they're running out of munitions, they're running out of bombs, and they feel they need, the generals say, hey, we might need these in an ongoing battle with Hezbollah if this continues to spiral out of control. Now, as I've said, and I think a lot have said, it's likely that Netanyahu wants the Hezbollah war to get worse because he feels that will draw the United States even more so into this conflict. I know many of you may be going, the U.S. is already in this conflict. And it's true. The U.S. is heavily backing and supporting and sending thousands upon thousands of bombs to be dropped on children to Israel. But I think Netanyahu believes that if Hezbollah, if the war were to spiral more with Lebanon, that the U.S. might get actually like boots on the ground involved. I have no idea what the likelihood of that is. I mean, the U.S. certainly don't mind a war, but the U.S. also is less powerful than we put on. You put boots on the ground in a lot of these areas, and the U.S. is going to get their ass whipped, at least in certain aspects. And you're going to see a lot of dead U.S. soldiers coming back. And all of a sudden, all the people who were against this genocide by Israel, that number is going to become exponentially greater if we saw a lot of U.S. troops coming back dead. Anyway, so a truce with Hamas could also make it easier to reach a deal with Hezbollah. Not just easier to reach a deal with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has clearly said they're striking Israel because Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. So Hezbollah has said, this is the reason we are bombing you. And so if Israel were to stop the genocide, seems highly likely that Hezbollah would stop their attacks. But another reason Netanyahu and his administration, well, let me just preface this by saying it's important to not just blame this on Netanyahu. That's what Biden and them want you to do, is say, oh, Netanyahu's the problem. If you get rid of Netanyahu, then this will all be fine. No. This is a whole, the system of Israel is the problem. The system of an apartheid state, the system of genocidal destruction, the system of settler colonialism. That's the core reality at the bottom of this. So don't just blame it on Netanyahu. However, I will throw in here that part of the reason that Netanyahu wants to keep these wars going with Hezbollah, the ethnic cleansing going on in Gaza, etc., is because he knows that the moment there's not a war, like an intense war going on, he's likely going to prison, because there's a lot of Israel that does not like Netanyahu. That doesn't mean they don't like genocide. There's a lot of Israel's very pro-genocide. They just don't like Netanyahu. So many believe he might end up in prison if these wars stop. So he kind of needs them to keep going, keep cranking that war drum. The military's attitude to a ceasefire reflects a major shift in its thinking over the past months, as it became more clear that Mr. Netanyahu was refusing to articulate or commit to a post-war plan. Part of the reason he's not committing to a post-war plan is because then you'd have to, you're putting in people's mind that we're headed towards post-war. But I don't think that certain aspects of the Israeli ruling elite have any intention of stopping the genocide. To them, it's not over till they own Gaza. I mean, Netanyahu, I showed it on this show. Netanyahu put up on his prime minister website the future for Gaza, which is a painting or an AI image or something of Gaza completely gone, razed, just completely obliterated and replaced by a Dubai-looking modern high-rise society. Now, of course, the only way you would build something like that is, first of all, if you've destroyed the entire culture and the entire place and everything that had any value in Gaza. But secondly, the only way you have something like that in Gaza is if Israel allows it. And why would Israel allow this modern high-rise skyscraper city in Gaza? Only if Israel owns Gaza are they going to allow that. Because every time Gazans build a building over about 3 stories, Israel bombs it. So basically, Netanyahu saying, we own Gaza now. We're going to destroy it all, replace it with our own little happy center of consumerism, Dubai-esque bullshit, and destroy all culture that was there. Here's a quote from Eyal Hulata, who served as Israel's national security advisor until early this year. Quote, the military is in full support of a hostage deal and a ceasefire. Here's another quote. They understand, meaning the military, that a pause in Gaza makes de-escalation more likely in Lebanon, and they have less munitions, less spare parts, less energy than they did before. So they also think a pause in Gaza gives us more time to prepare in case a bigger war does break out with Hezbollah. There's a lot being said here that isn't quite being said. So all of this is pretty groundbreaking, of the generals and the military structure coming out against what the country is doing right now in a large way, basically saying we need to stop this. But the deeper, what's not quite being said here is Israel can't compete with Hezbollah, especially if its number one focus is not just Hezbollah. Israel can't compete with Iran. Iran proved that they could get through the Iron Dome essentially at will, because the ones that were shot down were the slow-moving, cheap drones, and the ones that were not shot down were the hypersonic missiles. So Iran showed that they could basically do what they wanted. And Israel's running out of arms. But on top of that, the Israeli military has been shown to be very poor on the ground. Yeah, they have lots of bombs because the U.S. ships them lots of bombs, but they're very poor on the ground. And so Israel's in many ways failing in this quote unquote war. They're succeeding in many degrees in terms of a genocide, in terms of just killing lots of people. But in terms of actually, like, getting to a place where they have achieved victory and there's some sort of peace, but it's peace premised on stealing Gaza and ethnic cleansing. They don't seem to be that much closer to that. But on top of running out of munitions and running out of military people with much training, their economy is also immensely struggling. So let's get to the latest update on that, which, of course, if your economy is struggling, that hurts your military, hurts your ability to continue in this ongoing several wars and genocide, etc. Only one ship came into one of Israel's main ports, the Eilat port, and that port is now declared bankruptcy. Sorry, only one ship came in June. So an entire month, basically nothing has gone through one of Israel's main ports. And here's some more of the details of that. Eilat port seeks financial aid from the Israeli government as work is halted. Israel's port of Eilat has called on the government to provide it with financial assistance, as it has been inactive since the occupation state launched its latest war on Gaza. The Knesset's Economic Affairs Committee on Sunday, CEO of the Port of Eilat, Gideon Goldberg, said the port has been non-operational for 8 months due to attacks, meaning it has no revenue. 8 months, zero revenue for one of Israel's main ports. Ships heading to Eilat have been unable to access the Red Sea as a result of Yemen's Houthis, who have vowed to strike Israel-linked vessels in support of Palestinians in Gaza. Eilat has come under missile and drone attacks from Yemen as well. In December, Goldberg said there had been an 85% decline in operations since the Yemeni armed forces initiated attacks on ships in the Red Sea. In March, port management announced that it intended to fire half of the 120 employees as a result of the drop in its operational levels. So they're going bankrupt. They're firing a lot of their employees, and there's greater impacts than just this port, right? When ports can't receive and send out from a country, major impacts to the economics, to what's available on the shelves in Israel. It's just so many ongoing ramifications when ports are not operational. I mean, there was here in Baltimore, right? When the bridge collapsed in Baltimore, and then all the coal couldn't get in or out, mainly out, of the Baltimore port. Major economic ramifications from that. Of course, there were a lot of ports nearby where things could be rerouted, but Israel's not as large of a country and not as able to do that. Thank you, everyone who is here. Got a lot more news for you in this hour. Please hit thumbs up, hit subscribe. This channel, as with my past channels, could be banned or deleted at any time, as my TikTok was a few months ago, as my old YouTube was. So the way to keep in touch, just in case that happens, just in case we find ourselves there, is to join the free email list at leecamp.com. You go there, and assuming you allow the pop-up, there's a pop-up that says, please sign up for the free email list, and you can do it there. And thank you so much for all of you supporting this show. There's a lot of extra videos right now that I've been putting up at youtube.com/momentofclarity or youtube.com/@realleecamp. They're the same thing. And so lots of videos there to enjoy, and I hope you will support this show at leecamp.net or at patreon.com/leecamp. And, this is all good news, right? That's Israel is running out of the ability to commit genocide, that their economy is struggling, and that's all good. When someone's committing genocide, you should want their economy to struggle. You should want them to be uncomfortable, because the more uncomfortable they are, the more likely it is to end soon. So it's this is all great news, and most of it is not being reported by your mainstream media. They wouldn't dare discuss how Israel's economy may be collapsing soon. Of course, there's a lot of great boycotting going on. What was it? 1 out of 3 people around the world are boycotting at least one company in connection to Israel. Pretty incredible. Okay, so before where is that? Oh, man, did I lose it? No. Shite. Huh. Thank you, Dan. Goddamn right. Love you, brother. Dan is one of the best supporters, and Dan is going to be at the Los Angeles show. I'll also be there. So you don't have to just buy a ticket for Dan. If you're near Los Angeles, July 11th, I'll be performing live, as well as a Government Secrets. I'll be doing stand-up comedy. Then that'll be the opening, and then we'll tape a live Government Secrets there as well, July 11th at the Crow in Los Angeles. Thank you, Muscovy, for the donation. How utterly sickening they are running out of ammo since they can't stop killing. Yeah, they're running out of ammo because they are dropping so many bombs. Thank you, Self-Care Maven. One of the most repulsive moments of this debate that was a total shit show, with Biden barely speaking sentences and Trump just speaking nothing but lies. One of the most repulsive moments was when they were arguing over who supports the genocide the most. I support the genocide. No, I love the genocide. Oh, I'm so good at genocide. I'm great at. Oh, you're great at. No, I'm great at genocide. All right, because I seem to have lost this. I found it. Okay, here we go. Since we're on the topic of Israel and the Labor Party, let's connect the two. Electronic Intifada is reporting that an Israeli spy is still working for the Labor Party in the UK, even during the election campaign. Former Israeli spy Asaf Kaplan is still employed by the UK Labor Party during its current general election, which just ended yesterday. The Electronic Intifada can reveal. We have also learned of Kaplan's attempt to gain access to a cross-party electoral reform group called Get PR Done, alarming members and administrators of the group who were aware of his background in the Israeli military's elite cyber warfare unit. So he wasn't just anybody. Thank you, Luna de Sol, for the donation. Luna de Sol asking how the IDF will overthrow Bibi. Maybe the others in the chat can give you some ideas on how they think that'll happen. So this guy wasn't just some like low level IDF. He was in the elite spy unit in Israel, and now he's in the a member of the Labor Party, like internal office member of the Labor Party. In an extraordinary turn of events on Tuesday, the Labor Party threatened legal action against the Electronic Intifada after we sent them a request for comment. And I have had various people from Electronic Intifada on this show. They do great work. Ali Abu Nima and the group, and they do awesome work. So you should definitely frequent Electronic Intifada and support them. But this is classic. You know, they basically by threatening legal action, they're admitting that it's true. If it's not true, then they assume that even if you print it, the odds of it gaining traction are far more limited if it's completely not true. This is basically their admission. Like they threaten legal action. We've also learned, let's see. So, and all they did was request for comment. They said, we're going to report this. Do you have a comment? And they were threatened with legal action. Yet the Labor Party did not dispute any specific statements put to them in our inquiry for the story and effectively confirm that they still employ Kaplan during their current election campaign. Kaplan has remained active in the Labor Party since he was first exposed by Electronic Intifada in January of 2021. Wow, so he's been there a while. Labor leader Keir Starmer hired Kaplan to help the party influence events or narratives online and to track Labor members. So he's spying on his own party, which, as we saw with Jeremy Corbyn and various members of the Labor Party, it was the party versus itself, right? Keir Starmer and the right-wingers in the Labor Party wanted to purge and limit anyone who is legitimately left-wing in the Labor Party, and they largely succeeded at doing that. Since taking over Labor in 2020, Starmer obsessively purged the left on the pretext of bogus anti-Semitism allegations, especially against former leader Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn is now running as an independent candidate after he was purged by Starmer. And as we know, because this article's from 2 days ago, Corbyn won his seat as an independent candidate. Starmer has attracted millions of dollars worth of Israel lobby donations. In an email for Labor's official press account, a party spokesperson wrote that neither Mr. Kaplan nor the Labor Party accept your allegations of serious wrongdoing. You notice how careful they're being with their wording. They're not saying it's not true. They're just saying we don't accept its wrongdoing. Basically, it's perfectly legal for us to have an Israeli spy working here. There's no wrongdoing. We just happen to have an Israeli spy working here for years and years. Documents unearthed by Electronic Intifada also show that Kaplan spoke on a, quote, how to run a good campaign at the Jewish Labor Movement's conference in January of this year. The Israel Lobby's group's program for the event described Kaplan as a social organizing manager for the Labor Party. Is that all he is? Is there a little bit more? Is there something you're not telling us? Because I don't, does his LinkedIn say Israeli spy? Because I think maybe you should mention that. This suggests that Labor is now downplaying the surveillance aspect of Kaplan's role. His original full title, this is pretty funny, was Social Listening and Organizing Manager. They brought in Israeli spy to be the social listening manager. And then they were like, maybe we don't keep the word listening in there. If you're going to hire a spy, don't tell everyone he's going to be spying on you. That's a poor choice if you want to keep it on the down low. All right, one more story, quick story related to Israel before we get to the fact that the Democrats have the ability, have had the ability to fix, to change, to alter, to severely just evolve the Supreme Court, and they have not and will not do shite. Okay, that's coming up in just a moment. More details on that. The Gaza hospital director, I mentioned this the other day, who was released, This is one of the largest hospitals in Gaza. Of course, has been bombed and obliterated now by Israel. But he was arrested and basically disappeared for a long while, the director of the hospital, because that's what you do when you're just fighting a battle, right? You just kidnap and torture hospital directors. Israel released, so I already told you that he was released, but Israel released Abu Salmiya, the director of Gaza City's Al-Shifa Hospital, on Monday, along with dozens of former detainees, prompting a backlash in Israel and fears for the doctors' lives. Meanwhile, international media reports and statements made by Israeli officials suggested that Israel may soon scale back its military operations in Gaza. But for Palestinians who have endured, well, okay, this just goes on to talk about how bad it's been. But anyway, then we find out that the hospital director has revealed that he was brought before a judge several times, and even there they presented no evidence. So even though they have these sham courts, these kangaroo courts where they pretend that they're going to have a legitimate trial for whether this hospital director should be imprisoned all his life or interrogated to death, it's not actually real. It's kangaroo court, and his point is even there they brought no evidence. They had no evidence he'd done anything wrong. Back in Gaza, he also said that he also said that Israel arrested me as if they had caught a big fish. Now it turns out that everything was a lie, an illusion, and they inflated the whole affair. The hospital director said that prisoners face physical abuse and mental abuse daily, and that some detainees died during interrogation. So you can picture what type of interrogation results in some people dying. It's not talking. Okay, I got news for you. The type of interrogations that result in the execution of a prisoner is not the talky kind. And he has now been a witness to this. He also detailed various torture that goes on in these prisons that Israel has. And as I've mentioned before, Israel has roughly 10,000. It's tough to know the exact number because Israel black bags a lot of these people, but roughly 10,000 hostages in these prisons. And now we have evidence and eyewitness testimony from the former director of a Gaza hospital that has since been basically blown up. Okay. I want to get to Right now, there's a lot going on in the U.S. The U.S. election run-up that lasts 6.5 years. But you have the fact that even the ruling elite are now trying to push Joe Biden out and put someone else in because they know Joe Biden is he's a shell of his former self, and he was a sociopath even earlier. So a shell of a sociopath, I don't even know what that is. But that's what he be. And so even the ruling elite, who have dumped all kinds of money into his campaign, etc., even they are saying, let's put anything in there. Any kind of living human being that can speak sentences would be better. So a lot of them are trying to force him out. But that aside, you've got the Supreme Court decisions, which I've talked about on this show, several of them. They're all garbage. They're all horrific decisions. But I also point out how some of them are smaller than you might think if you actually look at the core reality, if you actually get down below the surface level. For example, the surface level is they ruled that Trump has immunity on his hush money porn trial case and other things. They ruled that any president acting as president can do anything and they're immune. And as Kagan said, I believe in the dissent, that means a president could murder someone and be immune or have someone assassinated. However, the reason this is less big news than you might have thought, than a lot of people are acting, is because you get down to core reality. our presidents are all war criminals. They're all supporting genocide. They're sending tens of thousands of bombs to murder children. They commit all kinds of crimes around the world. We have a CIA and CIA cutouts creating coups around the world. We have economic war going on around the world. Economic war that has killed God knows how many just in Syria alone. 94% of Syrians are now below the poverty line. So they're wondering where their next meal might come from. And that's all thanks to the U.S. and the U.S. presidency, et cetera. And that's just a short list. I didn't even talk about ecocide or various other ways that these presidents are criminals. All of that stuff, they're already immune. No one, our courts would never begin to bring charges against them for all that. So you have these psychopaths committing psychopath acts every day because this country came to a fork in the road and we picked the psychopath. And none of that are they going to get prosecuted for. So the worst stuff that our presidents do, they were already immune. It was already, our system was not going to prosecute it. Now what you have, what the Supreme Court decided is on these little smaller things where sometimes the ruling elite will go after a president like they're doing with Trump right now. You know, oh, he had classified documents in his toilet or whatever the fuck. Now they're immune for that stuff as well. Okay, it's something, but it's not as big a deal as MSNBC will make it. That being said, many people are now talking about how horrific the Supreme Court is, and they're some of them trying to blame third parties, right? Blame Jill Stein, blame anybody who voted for Bernie or anybody who didn't vote for Democrats. But all that is bullshit in about 12 different ways. I've already mentioned some of them. I'm going to bring some new ones here right now. But it's bullshit for one thing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg could have stepped down under Obama about 3 different times because she had cancer a lot. She was riddled with cancer and yet was like, no, I'm going to hang in here through the Obama administration and see what comes next. Well, next was Donald Trump, and we know what happened. So, that's just one reason. But here's some more from Jill Stein. Jill Stein posted this. She's obviously running as the Green Party presidential candidate. She says, every 4 years, we're regularly told we have to vote blue no matter who because of the Supreme Court. But voting for Democrats to fix the Supreme Court is betting on a sure loser. It's not happening. Democrats aren't saving SCOTUS, and they're not saving us from SCOTUS either. Most of you know, but SCOTUS is the initials for Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS. I prefer to call it SCROTUS because I feel like scrotum should be in there somewhere. So SCROTUS is terrible. She continues, while Republicans have been carefully strategizing a judicial takeover for decades, Democrats have been fumbling away SCROTUS seats and fast-tracking GOP judicial appointees. And many of you may remember how quickly the Democrats would plow through these right-wing justices. I mean, the approval process wouldn't last very long. Meanwhile, Obama had a Supreme Court pick after, you remember, died. I guess Scalia died, or I don't remember. Anyway, but he had a pick, and he put forward Merrick Garland, who's now Attorney General. But the reason Merrick Garland didn't get in there is because the Democrats just, they have the spinal fortitude of arthritic jellyfish, so they just backed down and didn't. They accepted the Republican stall techniques, and they barely even pushed the country to demand that the Democrats get their Supreme Court pick, and they ended up, we ended up with a right-wing judge that Trump put in there because the Democrats aren't actually fighting for us. And that's what Jill Stein's saying. They don't actually care as deeply as you think they do. These justices agree on the core issues that the ruling elite actually care about. These justices are not going to get away and not going to get in the way of tax cuts for the rich. They're not going to get in the way of workers being exploited. They're not going to get in the way of the environmental destruction that corporations enjoy so much. They're not going to get in the way of big oil. They're not going to get in the way of capitalism in general. So you get down to core reality, and these justices, despite seeming very different, agree on those core issues, and that's why they're in that spot, and that's why the Democratic ruling elite, which are all capitalists, are not actually as concerned as you might think about this, about SCROTUS. Jill Stein continues. When it leaked that SCOTUS was planning to overturn Roe v. Wade, the Democrats did nothing to codify this critical protection for women, just like they've done nothing for the past 50 years, in spite of their repeated promises. All they did was fundraise and tell people to vote blue harder. Vote harder. You just yank the lever or the push the pretend computer button harder. Push that touchscreen that will never tell you whether your vote was actually counted because the code is proprietary and you can never learn what actually happened. Push that so hard that your finger goes through the screen that you push so hard on that screen for the bluey. And then everything will work out. Now, Jill Stein continues, now that SCOTUS has gone full mask off in support of tyranny, what are Biden and the Democrats doing about it? Fundraising and telling people to vote blue harder. That is basically all they do. Oh, I missed a sentence. She said, when SCOTUS gutted the Voting Rights Act, the Democrats did nothing but fundraise and tell people to vote harder. Right now, what are they doing? Nothing but fundraising and telling people to vote harder. Why aren't they telling people to storm the streets? If they actually thought, and this is perhaps the most important point, if our ruling elite actually thought that this was the slippery slide to tyranny, that the Supreme Court had just given an open check to tyrants to do whatever, a blank check to tyrants to do whatever they want. If they actually believe that, shouldn't they be standing there on television? I mean, the Democrats that are in power right now, that are in position right now, that run a lot of our systems right now, shouldn't they be on TV, on Twitter, online saying, storm the goddamn streets, tear down the doors. We are on the brink of tyranny. Light it up. Shouldn't that be what they're saying if they actually meant this? If this was what they actually meant? No. Instead, send us your $20 check and push that screen a little harder. That's it. That's all. Because it's a fucking theater. It's a theater. It's a show. And I hope you're enjoying it. It is the fakest bullshit. And here we are. And what we're supposed to do is good Americans is pretend that it is all that matters. It is all that will create change. It is all that will create a better world. And it fucking won't. Jill Stein continues, they have been worse than useless because they turn every terrible decision into a convenient excuse for not even trying to do things they promised to the voters. Voting for Biden to deal with this illegitimate, corrupt, rogue court is like calling Mr. Magoo to stop a fascist coup. Yes, I appreciate the rhyme there, Jill. Way to rhyme. We need to call it what it is. The court has sided with tyranny over democracy, and just like King George III in 1776, it's got to go. So let's continue on this vein in terms of what the Democrats have the ability to do right now, what they've had the ability to do, what they should be doing if they mean what they say about our courts. And this one comes from my buddy, Adam McKay. I call him my buddy because I interviewed him once on Redacted Tonight. And that is the extent of our relationship. Me and him go way back. We were in Nam together. Adam McKay tweeted out, yes, Biden needs to drop out, and anyone suggesting otherwise is legally speaking a clown. Legally speaking. I like that it's legally speaking. But that shotgun blast to an already teetering Constitution, SCOTUS, just inflicted, has to be dealt with immediately. No? In my opinion, there are two moves, and here are the moves he says. One, fight like hell to expand the court by 3 justices. For those who are unfamiliar with this, it may seem like a law written in stone, brought down by Moses and delivered to the people by the Lord saith. The Lord saith that there must be 9 justices. But in fact, it's not in the Constitution. It's nowhere. We just made it up that there are 9 Supreme Court justices. We could add 3 or 12 or 45 at any moment we want. And then if there were 45 justices, first of all, you could have excellent cases, excellent people deciding them if you wanted to. And it wouldn't change things if you had 45. But you know what it would change is that every time one of them gets sick or dies or retires or whatever, everyone would not freak the fuck out because there'd be a lot more. You wouldn't have to go, oh my God, this changes everything. Sorry, to continue. Adam says, option number one, fight like hell to expand the court by 3 justices. Some Republicans even seem rattled by the immunity ruling. Why not push to get enough to join in to, not let the country descend into total fascism, as opposed to the 77% fascism we already have? See, another reason I like Adam McKay is he's willing to tell you that we're already 70% of the way there. And I'm sorry I didn't say your name earlier. Someone just became a new member on YouTube. Thank you for doing that. It is a whopping $3 a month, and you get all of the live streams when you want them. Whereas for everybody else, they disappear after about a day. Anyway, and you support this show, which, cool, awesome, you rock. So he continues. Unfortunately, adding 3 justices to the court would require Democrats to give impassioned speeches. What? Rally public support? No. And publicly call out big money and the representatives it owns. Big money owns. What? Never. Democrats. He says, and Democrats are only built to give 20-minute speeches at fundraisers on the Cape and make occasional appearances on MSNBC because they are rich clowns who stand for nothing despite pretending they do. The second option, Adam McKay says, is to arrest Thomas and Alito for treason, given the naked bribes. Particularly Clarence Thomas has taken naked bribes that we now know about, and support of January 6th, and both of them have heavily supported January 6th. Both have demonstrated in what way haven't they committed treason? They do not have total immunity. If Supreme Court justice murdered someone, what would happen? Meaning they don't have total immunity is his point, which is true. And whether you want to accuse them of treason or not, I don't know that they're any more treasonous than all these goons. But you could very easily make a case that at least Clarence Thomas has taken many bribes and is in bed with people who've had cases in front of the court. So it should be a no-brainer to drag him out of there kicking and screaming. Adam McKay continues, sadly, the old broken-down carriage horses of the Democratic Party probably won't do anything, not probably, definitely won't do anything, then ride around Central Park like they always do, worry about optics, fundraising, future lobbying jobs. But if this isn't a pedestrian suddenly opening up a red umbrella, what is? Adam McKay concludes, I'm curious to hear from any legal experts about charging them with treason. And if you're a liberal, no need to comment with, that'll never work. It's complicated. Just vote for Biden. I just assume that you're either saying or thinking 24/7. And I like that. Another reason I like Adam McKay is he's not afraid to take digs at squishy liberals who act like they want one thing. We gotta change this horrible court. And how are we going to do it? Just vote for the crypt keeper that is apparently the president and can't complete a sentence. Just vote for that and it'll be fine. Oh, really? That's your big stand? Impressive. All right. I got a couple more stories here before we wrap up. Please, everyone, remember, so important, as I'm suppressed, as I'm held down, as I'm censored, all those things, click subscribe. It's free. Why not? Click the bell icon. It's free. Why not? And then go over to leecamp.net, my locals page. And if you don't want to pay the $6 a month, click become a member, which is the free version. Do that. Why not? You're supporting me. You're supporting my stuff. You're supporting this show. And you don't get all the perks, but you get some of them. So what do you have to lose? leecamp.net will take you to my locals page. If you want to become a paying member, scroll down to become a subscriber. But if you're not up for that right now, just click become a member and you'll be supporting this show. All right. Let's get to Jeffrey Epstein, shall we? It's been a little while since we talked about him. New stuff on Epstein. Some transcripts have been revealed, which used to be hidden forever in Florida law, and now that's not the case. So we know something. We've just found out something we did not know before. Prosecutors knew about Jeffrey Epstein that he had raped teenage girls 2 years before his plea deal in the mid 2000s. So, for those of you who need a quick refresher, there was the time where Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and then he committed suicide with a paper T-shirt. There was that time when he was arrested. There was another time well before that. Was it 2006 or 2000? Yeah, 2006. Well before that, when he was arrested for underage prostitution at minimum. And he was brought up on federal charges. This is in Florida. And they gave him the craziest plea deal you've ever heard in your life. Like, this is a guy, I mean, if it's underage, then it's by definition rape. So this is a guy who having sex with underage girls, which by definition is rape, and they give him a plea deal that not only is a short amount of time, not only is a tiny meaningless fine to someone with a lot of money, but on top of that, he was allowed to leave the prison to go work at his office, which is the most insane plea deal I've ever heard. Come to prison for a little while, couple hours, put in a couple hours here or there, and then go home and to your office and go do work, whatever. But we now know, as per the grand jury records, prosecutors knew that Jeffrey Epstein raped teenage girls 2 years ago. That's a typo. They meant 2 years before the plea deal. Sky News has reported the deal has been widely criticized as a missed opportunity to stop him. Wasn't a missed opportunity. This was someone pulling strings. It could have been Mossad, which we know he was connected to. It could have been CIA. It could have been the fact that he just had friends in high places, like Bill Clinton, who he was close enough with for Bill Clinton to ride on his jet, his Lolita Express 26 times. Who knows who pulled the strings exactly, but we know strings were pulled. The grand jury investigation started in Florida in 2006, 13 years before he faced federal charges for sex trafficking in a case that ultimately resulted in his death. The transcripts were unexpectedly released on Monday. The documents reveal that the jury heard evidence alleging that Epstein, then in his 40s, had sexually assaulted girls as young as 14 at his Palm Beach mansion. One victim said that the late pedophile pleasured himself in front of her in the mansion. She also said that Epstein had used a sex toy on her. Another victim said that Epstein raped her before she turned 18. All this horrific shit. And the reason this is important is because before we had these documents, you could argue, oh, well, the government, yes, he was up on federal crimes, let's say prostitution, paying for a prostitute, but they didn't know the depth of what he was doing. They didn't know that he was raping underage girls. They didn't know that he was getting them to then pay other girls to come to his mansion, etc. But we now know from these documents, they knew all of it. They knew all of it. And they gave him, or so much of it, and they gave him the craziest plea deal you've ever heard in your life. The transcripts detail the disturbing nature of the case against Epstein, including an instance when he allegedly raped an underage girl who pleaded no, and then he gave her $1,000 as an apology. I mean, just so much horrific shit. And this is a guy who was so close with certain people. The list is too long to say it all. Also, Donald Trump, before he won the presidency, there was a lawsuit by a girl in New York claiming she was raped by Donald Trump at a Jeffrey Epstein party. That case then mysteriously disappeared before his election. I don't know where that case went or what happened to it, but it disappeared. And she was anonymous. She was a Jane Doe. So people don't even know, who it is to go try and find out the truth about that. We, of course, know Bill Clinton rode on that plane 26 times and so much more. Carsey in the chat says, don't forget Ghislaine Maxwell, which, of course, there's a lot about her and about her connections to Mossad and her father's connections to Mossad. And it's more than just Mossad, obviously. It's so much in the U.S. government. He had a large bribery and blackmail operation going. And let's just throw in here one quick reminder about the fact that Um, so when Epstein was arrested the second time, which resulted in his death, they went to his mansion, which notoriously had cameras at every angle, hidden cameras every angle to videotape everything. So you would imagine there's probably a lot of video footage somewhere in that mansion. Even if you got to saw open a safe to get to it, it's somewhere. The FBI goes in and fills a truckload of stuff that from that mansion, called evidence, right? Never seen again. My vision of it is they filled up the truck and they just drove it into the Hudson. That was the end of it. But never seen any of that evidence. We've also never seen anybody in Epstein's black book, which just because someone says black book does not mean they necessarily were involved in his rapes and things. Obviously, he knew important people that were not doing that with him, but some of them were, and no one in the black book ever had any charges brought up against them, ever. Wonder when that day will come. Okay, folks, I got to wrap it up there. But for those of you who don't know, I'm live 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Don't wait for the alerts. Just show up and join me because the alerts often will not come. You won't get emails. You won't hear about it. Just be here, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble, Locals, wherever you watch my stuff. I hope you will join me. I hope you'll support this show because we are suppressed. We are censored. I'm one of the most censored comedians in America. And what else? Live show in LA, July 11th. That's coming up. Less than a week, July 11th, LA. You can get tickets still. I think there's like 30 left at leecamp.com. You click my schedule tab. Details are there. Also, you can just look up The Crow in Los Angeles, and it should be on their calendar for Thursday the 11th. You can buy tickets there. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Keep fighting.